And our guest today, as I mentioned, is Amy Hoy. How you doing today, Amy?
Well, that's a loaded question.
It is. That's not a good question to be asking these days. What is
Wait,
what's interesting happening in your day today?
this is pretty much it. As you know, I've been sick on and off for 6 weeks, and I just got told yesterday I probably have walking pneumonia. So I'm going to be kind of low energy, guys. Sorry. Um, but what's interesting? That's a hard question. Also, yeah, I think like a lot of people, I've been looking like a few days ahead and not very far ahead at all, and so that's a difficult question to answer for me because I've been ill. I'm really excited that my house move should finally be over. My house has been for sale in Pennsylvania for a while. It's under contract. We're supposed to close Wednesday. We finally emptied it, and from doing that from remotely, we were planning on coming back and flying back and doing it hands on, and that didn't work. So that's been literally eating up my entire life. Now that that's over, I'm looking forward to actually doing some work again because I couldn't do both. I was calling people all day, every day, looking at video chats and photographs and creating inventories and getting quotes and talking with the movers and talking with the storage people and talking with the people who are going to come and clean out the trash and come and clean afterwards and
Whole
all
other
this crap.
job.
It's been a whole job. Plus,
Yeah.
apparently I have probably have the coronavirus, so that's exciting. Um, can't wait to actually work. Very excited to work. Yeah, I think that kind of underscores it.
Cool. Why don't we start by giving folks a little bit of context about the work that you do when you're not sick and moving your house? And we can start with what you work on now, but I also would love to sort of bring that back to the beginning of your
Sure.
career in the context. I'd like specifically to hear a little bit about the beginnings of your career during the 2008 crisis.
So currently, obviously, I have a business with you, which is the 30 by 500 stacking the bricks business. We teach people who are designers and developers, but or other freelance or skilled creatives how to find product opportunities and create products that people actually buy, from like how to market to writing sales copy to actually making the product and making sales. And that is probably about 50% of my working time. And then the other 50% is I run a small software company. We have three products: NoCo, which is time tracking and invoicing for freelancers and consultants. We have PEP, which is recurring tasks, task logs, and workflows. Um, and then there's Every Time Zone, which is a tool for creating meetings and sharing time zones across the globe, time zones. But I started off way back in the day, the very first freelancing gig I ever had. I wrote an article for a now defunct Turner Broadcasting easing called Spiv in 1995, for which I was paid $100, which seemed like a lot of money at the time because, I mean, look at me, I'm not very old. So I was a child, literal child, and I was like, well, that's great. This is what I want to do. And I then learned I learned HTML before that, and I learned web design and did a lot of HTML web design stuff for some programmers I knew online, and then further got into fancier web design. I did data entry, I did phone sales, I did basically everything to pay my bills. As a teenager, I moved out of home early, and then I did learned PHP and MySQL and did web application development as a freelancer. And all this time, I was not earning much money. I was making like maybe 35 or $45 an hour at most. Like that was in the 2005, 2006. So I was very underpaid, and I was having a lot of difficulties, and I actually got conned out of a bunch of money, a client who never paid me. And I took a job with one of my clients, and then took another job that was better than that. And I took a third job, and I was like, fuck this, pardon me. I don't like being employed, and became a much, much, much better paid consultant rather than a freelancer. And that was in 2007, 2008. So we all know what happened then, I think.
Before we get to what happened in 2000, 2007, 2008, can you draw a line of difference between a freelancer and a consultant?
So, freelancing versus consulting. To me, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, but freelancing, you're basically at the mercy of your client. You are essentially a tool that they are using, I think, to get something done. Typically, they already know what they want. They're coming in, they're telling you what to do, and you're executing on it. Um, you are not paid for your advice. You are paid purely for executing things. And consultant, one, it just sounds fancier. Two, you have more of an advisory role, probably in addition to doing the work, but some people are just pure consultants, which is some of my favorite work to do now, actually, because I get to talk and people listen, and then I don't have to do anything else. Um, but I think the key differences are the advisory aspect, more like a partner than simply a tool to be used. And it's like it's a power difference.
What was the first step that you took from being a freelancer to consult? Do you remember what the first thing you're like, I'm going to do this? Was it a conscious, like, I want to do consulting now? Or you realized that somebody would pay you for strategy above and beyond the work? How did you actually make the very first step in that direction?
So when I was working in my jobs, I had built a lot of connections with people. I had started writing about programming stuff that I was learning as a designer, and I became known as like the designer who also does Rails. And so people would seek my opinions because of my writing. And they, because of what I was writing, people were like, well, this person knows what she's talking about. And so people would like start asking me stuff versus just getting me to make things. Like I used to apply for freelance jobs on like job boards and stuff like that. And that's how I used to get a lot of my work or referrals, but lesser than I was just sort of like random web stuff that I used to do. And then after I did my jobs, I was able to get better connections. People knew who I was. People sought me out specifically, and I people trusted my opinions because of what I'd written. And people who were like web developers who I knew who were working inside companies, when they needed a designer, they thought of me.
I have one more question before we get to what happened in 2008.
Also, I charged a lot more. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was, I think, charging a lot more. Obviously, it does change the setting
When
to
you say a lot
take the
more,
initial.
because you said before it was like $35 an hour, you say a lot more. Are we talking double, triple?
So I am trying to remember. Um, it went up very fast. I think I was charging $150 an hour to start with once I had left my job, but I might have been a little more. I don't remember specifically, but it was at least 2 to 3 times as much.
Yeah. And the last question that I have before we get to the crisis in 2008, you mentioned that a big part of what made the shift was you were writing,
Yeah,
and it sounds like you were crafting your opinions. What kinds of things were you writing, and where were you writing them?
I am as dry as the desert. So uh, I was writing on my personal blog. I was writing a combination of design opinions and critiques, um, rants about stupid stuff people said on the internet that was related to my field. That's what I do on Twitter now. And then I was also cataloging as I was learning Ruby on Rails. I would write PHP and other content, but what really started to get people to pay attention to me was writing about my experience learning Ruby on Rails as someone who did not have a computer science background and like until then didn't really know what design patterns were and stuff like that. It was actively like explaining the things I was doing wrong and the difficulties I was having, which people really really like.
Yeah. So combination of observations, references, and rants.
Yeah,
The stuff that we might post to Twitter or Facebook to actually compile it and put it in a place where people can read it.
yeah.
But
I
then
wrote a lot of
also,
like sort of like philosophical type explorations of design stuff.
like lessons learned on the job essentially. So every project you're
Yep.
learning new things, whether it's here's a problem that I solved or here's a technical thing I had to learn. Actually writing about that stuff meant that other people then perceived you as someone who knew more.
Yes, and I think this is something that I have always done to some degree, but like it really, I knew that if I started writing about Ruby on Rails, so it was an ascendant technology at the time, right? It was brand new. That people love to hear relatable stories, and that weirdly, when you write about not knowing something and explain how you are learning it, that's almost more credible than not just writing as if you know everything.
Totally.
Because people relate to you.
So you're writing, you're building some credibility, you're building some trust in this audience. People start seeking out your opinions. What happened in
Yes.
2008?
A lot of things happened in 2008. So once I had left my last job, which was at LimeWire of all places, I had teamed up with my friend John, who also was an interface designer, more of the visual graphic side than me. And we had been doing a lot of work for clients who were referred to one of us or the other. And then in 2008, a bunch of stuff happened. Obviously, the financial crash began to happen. Um, the real estate based financial crash, the Great Recession began. I met my now husband, Thomas, and we started to build side projects together because that's our love language, apparently. I built a, so stepping back, we had a meeting with, nope, that's the wrong order. My sense of chronology is not the best, as you know, Alex.
It's
Like
okay.
I I am unmoored in time. So we had a meeting with Twitter to pitch them a visualization project as well as to fix their JavaScript. In 2008, Twitter's JavaScript was horrifically bad. It was so bad that it was so slow that when you were typing in the like tweet field, that you would get like spinning weight indicators because it couldn't handle the typing speed, which is ridiculous. And also, it was the JavaScript files were huge. Anyway, so we had a meeting with them, and I wanted to sell them on a visualization project, which was sort of a combination of like we feel fine and what makes Twitter Twitter. And they actually got back to us a few weeks later. It was Ev personally who told us that they, quote, couldn't get it together, unquote, as in politically, to hire us to fix their problems. And I was like really bummed because I really wanted to do that visualization project. And then a few weeks after that, I was just in the shower and I was like, I could just fucking do it. I was like, why am I waiting for someone to pay me money for something I could just do? And so I made Thomas help me. he was into it, and we built Twistori, which is TWISTORI.com, which it looks a little broken these days, but at the time, before hashtags and stuff, it looked way better. And it literally just searched the old Twitter fire hose for tweets that had the phrases "I love," "I wish," "I think," "I feel," "I hate," "I believe," and displayed them at what seemed like a live stream. Was never live, but it had that sort of sensation, and people went nuts for it. It got covered everywhere. All the jobs, and what happened was the JavaScript web people we knew saw it and they loved it and they sent it to people, and then it got sent to people, and then it got sent to people. So it spread out from beyond our little network to a much broader network. It got covered in all sorts of tech press, and then it got picked up by like real press. And then it got on the desks of creative agencies and marketing people inside large corporations, including an agency that served the marketing agencies for large corporations. And they hired us to do Twistori, but for the tennis channel. And it was like an insultingly cheap price. Like they offered $2,000, which was nowhere near our hourly rates when you consider the work that it was done. But I thought that this would be a great opportunity to get an in with them and to also have this in our portfolio. And so we did do that. And it just led to more and more contracts from other companies that saw that and like, I want that from my company.
So I want to rewind the clock a little bit because there's a part of the story too that not only was there the 2008 financial crisis, but you were doing some work inside some of those big financial firms, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I was working on a project inside Bear Stearns. I don't know. Does anyone else remember that one Sunday when it came out on a Sunday, which was the craziest thing? The federal government was like force selling Lehman Brothers to Goldman Sachs on Sunday, and that's like when it all began. That was like the boom that started the financial crash. I mean, obviously the issues were there before, but that was like the precipitating event. And I was like in New York at the time because I was going to work at Bear Stearns on my consulting project the next day. And I called my client and I was like, should I come in? He's like, do you want to come in? And I said, will I get paid? And he said, yes. I'm like, well, I'm coming in. So yeah, we continued my friend John and I continued to work at Bear Stearns for the next few weeks, and we got paid. And eventually, the course, the project was shut down. And so that was like my insider view. The mood there was real weird, and I just stopped like wearing business clothes. I just started going into the office in jeans. I'm like, I don't care anymore. Like it was just like everyone inside Bear Stearns dressed exactly the same. All the men wore like dark gray or black dress pants and blue Oxford shirts, and they were just like shuffling around like sad penguins everywhere. It was insane.
This is the part of the story that I feel is the most like connected and related to today, even though the circumstances are so different. But just like
Yeah.
that sort of cataclysmic shift in large, like, and the ripple effect through the economy, right? So
Yes,
you were consulting with a team or a unit, presumably inside of Bear Stearns.
that's right.
Some weeks later, that project ends, and so while those ripples are spreading through the economy, you and John still need to go out and find consulting work, right? What that's the thing that I really want to focus on for a chunk of time now is what was that like? What were the challenges like then? And we can compare them to now if you think that's useful. And what were you doing that actually was working in terms of being able to find a client in an environment where it seems like businesses are freaking out, no one's spending money?
So for the most part, all of our clients came from referral or from my writing. That's pretty much all of it. I had not done prospecting uh, since that last period, the previous period where I had been freelancing, where I did all sorts of things, including cold calling and job boards and stuff like that. At this point, work primarily came to us. One of the things that I did do that brought in clients was I offered a fixed price usability analysis for your applications, and I wrote about that on my blog because a lot of my readers were app developers, like not phone apps, but like web apps. Um,
Talk about that offering because I think that's actually really interesting and potentially really relevant to right now.
so I called it App CPR, that and um, I offered a fixed price $3,500 report. I would go through the app and analyze all of the screens and then write up my recommendations, including some light wireframing. It was usually like a 25 page report. And I think I charged $3,500 for that at the time.
What do you think
Uh,
makes a service like that make sense in a time where people are feeling economically constrained or businesses or otherwise? It's not that businesses don't have problems; it's that
yeah,
their brains are in all kinds of different places, right?
indeed. So there's a few reasons that that is such a successful way to go, I think. Um, One, it's a fixed price, so people know what they're paying. Like, I feel like a lot of people shy away from projects that have any kind of uncertainty, including like a price tag. Like they don't even want to necessarily ask how much it's going to be. So fixed price, you know what you're getting. It's very clear. Um, that's what people call it productized services these days because it's like you have an expectation of what you're getting and for how much it's going to cost, and you don't have to worry about those things at all. The other thing is that it would enable them to fix a lot of their problems themselves rather than hiring a designer to come in and fix them all. They were sort of getting designer light, which is advice and some rough wireframes, and also an explanation of why the things they were doing were wrong. And they could then use that as a guidebook to go in and fix shit on their own, which is of course cheaper than hiring someone to come in and do all the things, especially um, people think designers like waste time twiddling pixels. I know, I'm not saying this is true, but like I think it's a lot of the perception of people who hire designers is they come in and they like mess around with stuff for far longer than they should to get it just right because they're athletes. And so having this report that's like very clear brass tacks, here's what you can do to fix it without a lot of details, but it was still like a guidepost for them to like follow.
Yeah, I think that also for folks that are tuned in, that also strikes me as a great first step in the direction of consulting. If you're
Yeah.
used to being the one doing it, and you've got clients who are either postponing projects, or it's hard to get people on the phone, or people are concerned about rates, or you're worried about cut hours, going back to that client and saying, well, if I still understand what the problem is, for a fixed amount of money, I can put together an analysis and a set of recommendations that you could either then implement in house, or even hire a cheaper person
Yep.
to implement. That way,
Yes.
your time is
Giving
being,
them leverage.
yeah, your time is more efficient, as well as it addressing all of those other pain points. I think the thing that you said that's really important right now is, in an uncertain environment, selling something that is uncertain is extremely difficult. So the more
Yeah.
certain, the more concrete the package. So the two things I heard you say are, a fixed price, so they know what the dollar amount is, as well as a relatively fixed outcome. Like, what you're going to get. It's going to be a report that gives you instructions on what the most important parts of your app are to fix.
I
And so
believe
you're
I had a
thinking,
sample one also.
yeah. The other
I think
thing
I have
about
like a sample one.
nice thing about a fixed price project like that is you can, each time you offer it, as people buy it and you implement it and they use it and they say this is really great, you can then use that experience to build templates for the next one, which means each subsequent version of this project is more efficient, even if the dollar amount is the same, which means
Yep.
the amount you're getting paid per hour gets increasingly better per project. So this is another way for you to just to solve problems for the customer. uh,
Yep.
uh, but the question that I have in here, and I'm going to try and proxy for the audience, is how did you figure out that that was a problem that people would actually would consider paying for?
I ripped somebody off. Not literally. So I almost all of the things that I've done in my business, I've learned from watching someone else do, or I've read about it. I don't see any reason to innovate um, in the like structure of the things that I do when I could just learn from what already works. Um, so 37 Signals was a design company that I used to follow pretty closely back in the day, even before they made Basecamp, which I'm sure everyone's heard of. They used to be like design bloggers, and so I would follow them. And they had some projects, including a fixed price one-page redesign project that they charged, I think, $2,500 for. They would like literally redesign one screen for you in a certain time period, um, for a single price. And I was like, well, that's a good idea. And so I essentially borrowed it and made it a slightly different thing. And it was a good idea and it worked.
Cool. I want to shift gears a little bit into sort of adapting some of the lessons you have, as well as your own experience as a business owner who is running a business that is still making money, and is potentially even looking to hire freelancers and things like that. Not that this is an opportunity for people in the audience to pitch you, but
Yeah, sorry, not hiring
for
freelancers right
them
now.
to get in the head of a business owner. The question that I'm thinking about is right now it feels like, especially if you've had a project canceled on you or deferred and things like that, it feels like no companies are hiring. But in fact, the evidence is quite the contrary. It's just the ones that you're used to serving probably aren't.
Yep.
In fact, I was talking to somebody yesterday who runs a job board for freelancers or for freelance opportunities, and said in the last 30 days, freelance posts are up 50%,
Yeah, no,
which
I
is
can explain
interesting.
that.
So
So
yeah, I was
here's the
going to ask
situation.
how can you how would you look at that, and then I would say the second part of that is how would you go about figuring out what companies or industries are looking for your services if you're a freelancer?
So I never did like prospecting like you're talking about. Never
Mhm.
done it. I always was through referrals or through posting or like directly applying stuff on job boards, which is a different situation. Than like there was a time when I did cold calling to local businesses trying to sell services, and it just worked out in like the worst way possible. It's a long story. Um, but sorry, gather my thoughts here.
It's okay.
Oxygen is important, apparently. So the things that I would say are that businesses are going to be cutting their permanent headcount, which means they're going to be firing people. So if they have like a full-time person on who would normally handle stuff, they maybe can't afford them anymore. They're going to let them go, which then means some of the work still has to get done, which means they'll probably look to hire a freelancer or a consultant for it, because the total cost and responsibility of a freelancer or consultant is much less, even when that like salary equivalent is the same. You don't have to pay for like 401ks or health insurance or unemployment insurance, or like you can let them go easily. It's like it's a whole thing. It's not obviously a great thing for people who lose their jobs, but it is like an opportunity for freelancers to get more work and different work than they would normally. The other thing is, if you have network people who are in your network, or friends, or even make friends who are in a sort of adjacent field, you can refer work to each other. Like I got a lot of referrals from web developers who don't know design but knew me as like the design girl who codes. So like if you can sort of be not a big fish in a small pond, but like a fish of a different color in a different pond, maybe.
Yep.
Um, my metaphor machine's not working very well, but y'all know what I'm talking about. That's really helpful. Also, the Twistory sort of served as a similar option to the app care package, the fixed price project that I offered, because people saw it and they said, I want that for me. Like I made a project that made people who became my clients look at it and say, I want that, but for my words or whatever. And that opened the door. It gave them something to think about. They weren't coming up with new creative ideas. They were literally looking at it and saying, can you make this for me? Which then led to other conversations about, well, is this exactly what you want, et cetera? Like, what are your goals? And could then spin that into different projects. The marketing agency I told you about that hired us for the Tennis Channel connected us to a bunch of people. And then they told their friends in the marketing world, and then they hired us also. So it was like a very clear private project. It was a clear deliverable that they could see versus an amorphous, let's make something new type thing. The other thing is, in a way, in an economic situation like this, you can go both down market and up market. So for example, I saw someone in here that they do branding and logo design. People probably cannot to hire you with many people to create new logos. Probably there are not that many new businesses appearing, but you could offer teardowns of people's logos. Like individually, you could offer that as a service, or you could have like a 30-minute phone call offering, or you could do design sessions where you design logos and explain why you're doing stuff and charge money for people to watch you. Like all sorts of stuff like that, that is like not paying thousands of dollars for a new branding package, but like getting a taste of it so you can maybe like muddle through on your own type situation. The other end is going up market. So Alex and I obviously run this education business where we teach people how to do business stuff, including like how to write your sales copy. I have recently taken a few gigs where someone pays me to write their sales copy for a lot of money, which I wouldn't normally do. But in this environment, in this economy, God, I can't believe that phrase is coming back. In this economy, if someone's like, I'll pay you $20,000 to completely redo all of my landing page copy and my strategy for my very profitable large business, I'm not going to say no, which is not work that I would normally take, because normally I just focus on my products. But like needs must.
That's great. I want to say hey to the audience and let you know I do want to make sure we have time for your questions. So now would be a good time if you've got questions that you either came into the session with or that have come up for you while Amy and I have been chatting. You can go ahead and drop those in the chat below, and I'll sort of moderate those through and ask those to Amy.
And as far as types of clients,
Yeah.
obviously I would say look at the job boards. I feel like they're going to be, I feel like a year or two ago, job boards were, I would say, more down market, like Upwork or whatever, where you're going to be outbid by people from other countries where the cost of living is so low. But now there are more specialized job boards that are higher end, that are curated. There's stuff like the one that Wildbit just launched, people first jobs, and then there's Folio, FOLYO, which is a curated job mailing list, and there's like a whole bunch of specialized job boards. And you can just see what types of, I mean, obviously you can apply for the gigs there, but you can also see what types of companies are posting and what they're asking for. And then people who want to hire freelancers, like the uncertainty again is the biggest thing. So if you can like really clearly define what they'll get from you, why they should hire you. A lot of freelancers are super fucking flaky, and it's like nightmare for anyone who hires them. So if you can demonstrate that you are not, through writing, through the way that you discuss their concerns before you ever actually, like even when you like apply for the gigs, like that's going to be a huge thing that'll make you stand out.
Yeah, that's actually something I was chatting about with somebody who we're going to have on one of these sessions in the next couple of weeks. Is about how you as a freelancer can be proactive with your existing clients
Oh
to
yeah,
say,
great.
hey, here's a thing that I noticed could be done. Would you like me to do it? And even how to ask for that in a way where it doesn't add more decision fatigue to the business owner. So we're headed in that direction. I added the people first jobs and folio on the website. Um, do 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 do. I really like your note about looking at the existing job and gig boards, not just for jobs and gigs, but specifically for patterns in
Yeah,
what are the kinds of companies that are hiring and what kinds of things are they hiring for, and the idea of sort of filtering that back in on, oh, that's a thing that I can do, right? So I think the common thing is we look for work that matches what we do rather than work that's being asked for and go, wait, I have the skills to do that, or I have 80% of the skills to do that, and I
yeah,
can figure out the remaining 20 either on the project or between when I reach out to them and when they say yes.
absolutely. I feel like when times are good, you can get by being super, super narrow. And unless when times are bad, unless your narrow specialty is in really high demand because it's urgent and critical, you're going to have to figure out how to broaden your offerings, and to branch out from what you would normally do. Like you gotta be willing to try different things and change stuff up.
It also makes me think that, in terms of figuring out how to leverage assets and resources that you already have, when you take a look at what things companies are actively hiring for, you can turn that around and write an email or a message or something that says,
Yeah,
"Hey, I'm making myself available to do this," and then share that with your existing network of past clients on
yep,
LinkedIn, on Twitter, Facebook, wherever it is. I think folks are often hesitant to let people know that they're available for two reasons. One is it seems like everyone is, and so that seems selfish. But at the same time, the flip side is if there's a business out there that really needs your help, you not
yep.
making yourself available is not helping them, and that's bad for both of you.
Yeah, people
Um,
might just not think of you because they have so much else on their plate. So if you're having problems and you're like, I can't even lift my head to like look ahead, I have to deal with this problem, and someone shows up and says, I can help you with that specific problem, I mean, that's a power move, and
yeah.
people are going to be grateful to hear from you.
What do you think is an example of a like a business problem that might be a little bit that didn't exist prior to a month ago, right? Or maybe the context changed because of the
So,
economic crisis or things like that.
sure, yeah. So, like, if you were doing general communications and design and copywriting type stuff, or like email courses, or like branding of like projects, etc. I feel like a lot of business people don't know how to communicate with their customers in a way that's not offensive at this time. Like people still want to buy stuff, they still need products, but how do you talk to them in a way that is like sensitive without being one of the 8 fucking million people in their inbox with a COVID-19 email, etc. People who help strategize how to be more efficient. Like if someone came in and told me how they could save me $500 or $1,000 a month on my software as a service infrastructure, I would be extremely interested to hear from them. You know, how to save costs without cutting quality of stuff is something that people are going to be very interested in. How to repurpose products and services for other audiences. I mean, that's what you're here to learn to do, but like also if you do business advice or coaching, that's something that you could help people figure out. Um, uh, I have actually an article coming out that talks about that specifically coming up. And remote work. like a lot of people being thrust into remote work and have no fucking idea how to do it correctly. It's new, and like during a stressful time, it's the worst time to try something new. So having someone there to handhold them or offer them specific products and services that help would be great. Um, those are just off the top of my head.
That's great.
Top of my head is now empty, but I'm sure there's more.
I'm going to also link to in the chat, and I'll do this in the recap as well. There's two articles that Amy wrote near the beginning of when all of this began to happen. One is it's called "To Survive a Down Market: Be an Investment, Not an Expense," which I think encapsulates what you're describing here. Is to be a person who provides a service that turns every dollar they put into you into some multiplier, even if it's only like a 1.2x. It's still a fairly, again, relatively certain return. Treat yourself as an investment and and you have to show them. You
Yeah,
can't say I will write articles for you and your business will grow. It has to be here's how the articles I write for you will help your business grow, and
yep,
here's the articles that I write for you will help your business grow now.
yeah. And the third article that I'm working on now, I've actually talked to a lot of people who have changed things up in their business, who to make more sales currently, um, by, like, for example, repositioning the product or offering bundles, like bundling services, etc., with other people to get exposure and like all sorts of stuff like that. I've done a lot of talking to people and research for this article. It's coming up with a bunch of ideas on
Without
how to
giving away
repurpose what you do.
without giving away all the goods, can you share one example from the article?
Yeah, I'll share two. One of them, a guy who does paid newsletters. That is, it's like productivity and sort of like the intellectual world around productivity and like creating creative things type writing. Partnered with a friend of his on a newsletter. So um sorry, oxygen. uh, he writes a newsletter called Super Organizer, and he actually launched a bundle where you can get his newsletter and someone else's newsletter that's like related. And
Hmm.
he said he was like the best sales days they've ever had, either of them. And that's like a product that you would think is non-essential. You think like, well, if people are going to cut costs, they're going to cancel their fucking Substack newsletters, right? But they actually made a lot of sales. And I have information on that. It's going to go in the article. Another thing is our friend Kurt Elster does consulting for Shopify merchants primarily. A lot of them offer consumer products, which is, I feel like, potentially either horrific or great to be in, depending on what your product is. And they make a special key organizer. One of the clients and one of their immunocompromised customers wrote to them a photo of him using it to touch door handles so that he didn't have to touch them, and so they immediately like turned that into promotion and like made a lot of sales.
That's
And
amazing.
what's cool about both of these things is they're both repositioning the product, offering something different, making a sales pitch, but like respectful. Like, here's how you can get more for your money, or here's how you can use our product in a way that's like potentially helping you. But they didn't come up with that. Their customer wrote in, it just one, and they jumped on it, um, which I think is really cool, really
That's
smart.
awesome. It
They
also
listened.
makes me it also makes me think of something that I've been talking about with a lot of folks in the co-working world in particular, is that now is sort of an unusually good time to be thinking about collaborations with people who, a, have complementary skills. I think or
Yep,
services that you mentioned, but even people who you'd maybe consider traditionally your competitor.
absolutely.
When everyone's back is against a wall, people are more willing to do things that they typically wouldn't. And not everyone's going to say yes. Not everyone's going to have a long game. But if you think about it as a sum is greater than the parts, I think the way to win in this strategy is to say, here's what I do, here's what I'm good at, and here's what I bring to the table, which could include your past roster of clients or a great example or demo or freebie to give away or something along those
Yep,
lines. Bring that stuff to the table first and then say, I think if we were to combine what you do and what I do, we could offer something, that is like I said, a bundle package. So the value is bigger, but also you're reaching both people are reaching not only your own audience, whoever you have the ability to reach on, again, on LinkedIn or your email list or whatever it might
yep.
be, but theirs as well. And so it's a
Edward de Bono called it, I think, coopetition.
competition. I don't like
Doesn't
that
really
word,
roll
but
off
I
the
like
tongue.
the sense.
No, but it does encapsulate the idea.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we've got a couple minutes left. If anybody does have any questions, we can take those in the chat room, or if you'd like to come on screen, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, we can work towards winding up today. This has been Great, Amy. Thank you, especially knowing that you're
Yay.
not feeling 100% and you've uh, been dealing with a lot of stuff on your plate. So thanks for making the time for everybody here.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Last couple of things I'll mention before we wrap up for the day, if there aren't any other questions. Next week's session is going to be really nice and complimentary. Actually, Amy mentioned folio.me that I linked in the chat. Rob, who created that, is going to be coming on next week and talking about specifically some of the industries that sort of industry shift that he's seeing. What are the kinds of companies that are hiring, and what are they hiring for? Some of the patterns that he's noticing. The thing to know with Rob is that his audience is primarily a design audience. That's what Folio serves. But he's paying attention to the wider range of what's going on in the world, and so I'm excited to be able to invite Rob on here as well.
So that's a great example too, because Rob and I are working on a software thing together, and we're going to mutually promote our my time tracking and invoicing productivity software, NoCo, to his mailing list and vice versa. By the way, we are adding some fun new features to NoGo, which are all aimed at helping people stay focused during these times. Which is another example. These were on our roadmap. Like we're going to add a Pomodoro timer and a daily priorities feature. We already have just added a goals feature, and these were all on our roadmap. But we're going to do some. We were planning on doing other things first, but now that some people are being thrust into remote work and we're all having a hard time focusing, we are moving those features up. Like that's just an example of how we're rejiggering things because of the events.
Yeah. I'll add two more things before we go. One is that I have been publishing updates about the Pennsylvania unemployment for self-employed people, freelancers, gig workers, and so on. I've been keeping up to date. That if you may have seen an email go out about that over the weekend. The portal for Pennsylvania is live, but it is riddled with bugs. Yesterday, I added a pretty substantial update from Philly Legal Assistance about that. If you want to check that out, the link should be in your email. If not, I'll add it to the chat. The very last thing that I'll mention is we've been making some updates to phillyfreelance.com. Hopefully you saw those. There's sort of an automatic feed as we're adding more events. That'll be easy to spot. We also just got our first batch of mugs and stickers, and so I'll show off this cool mug that I got. It says "Good work, good pay, good people" was actually a quote that came from the group exercise we did during the Philly Freelance Fest. We've got two others, and all of the designs on here were created by local Philly artists as well. So these are custom Philly Freelance mugs. Pretty stoked to have those available, and you can check those out too. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for being here again, Amy. Thank you for sharing generously your knowledge, experience, and all of that. Thanks,
My
Catherine, for
pleasure.
running Zoom behind the scenes, letting folks in from the waiting room. And thank you to everyone who joined us for some time in your day. We'll be back here next Tuesday, and I'll have more information about the new the next sessions lined up hopefully by the end of today. So that's all I got. Thanks, everybody. Oh, Amy, where can folks follow you online if they want to check out more about you?
Uh, Depends on what you want. I write about business also with you, obviously, at stackingthebricks.com, like building a wall, stackingthebricks.com. You can follow me on Twitter, but I warn you, I tweet very eclectically. Amy Hoy on Twitter. So like, I don't expect you to follow me. I'm
And I'm
bad
going
at
to link
personal
to
branding.
Noko as well.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
You're welcome.
Yeah, if you
Cool.
are a solo freelancer and would like to try NoCo, we are working on a more affordable plan that doesn't include invoicing for $12. So if you would like to track your time and get access to our goal tracking and then our upcoming Pomodoro and other features for less than our list price, just write in support and I would be glad to give you the discount early. So we're dropping it by 33% the price if you don't want the invoicing feature. So
Cool. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you back on the email list. Cheers. Bye bye.
yay. Bye.
Hi. Thank you.